Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the webinar of Japan's education sector today, International Education Market Updates, Trends, and Developments. My name is Morgan Flanagan, and I am the Coordinator of Events and Special Initiatives at the BC Council for International Education. Thank you very much for joining us today on what I hope will be an informative session regarding international education in Japan. Today's webinar is co-hosted by the Embassy of Canada to Japan. Before we get started, it is important to acknowledge that at BCCIE, we live and work on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Now we will move on to a few housekeeping items. I know we are all familiar with Zoom, but as a reminder, please use the chat function to send your questions or if you have any comments. If you need any technical assistance during the webinar, please also use the chat box and we will help answer your inquiry. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Stephen Lapointe, First Secretary, Public Affairs, and Ms. Megumi Akiyama, Information and Education Promotion Officer from the Embassy of Canada to Japan to start their presentation. Stephen, I'll pass it over to you now.
Thank you very much. And we'll just get the presentation started. Here we are. So, well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stephen Lapointe at the Embassy of Canada in Tokyo. I'm the First Secretary for Public Affairs, as Morgan mentioned. I cover a lot of ground, but education is my most important file. We also do some other things here. The section deals with public media inquiries, our embassies, social media, all those types of things, cultural and academic diplomacy, all those types of things as well. So having said that, let's quickly move on. Just so to situate you, looking at Japan, the embassy is, of course, in Tokyo. We do have a consulate in Nagoya that has a Canadian representation there as well, and a number of trade offices, which are smaller locally run offices. All of those do have connections with schools, but the vast majority of education work is done through the embassy here in Tokyo. So we do have additional members of the team here, and just like to present that. So we also have, in addition to Megumi and myself who are here this evening, Hiroko Mikami is an assistant education promotion officer who some of you may already know, or some of you may get to know if you continue to work with us in the future. And down at the bottom of the screen there, this is our email address. If you have any inquiries whatsoever, do feel free to reach out to tokyo.education@international.gc.ca, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. During the webinar, of course, it's perfectly okay to also use the chat function. This is just once we're offline. If you do have any questions for us, do reach out that way. A quick snapshot of Japan. I think it's really interesting to compare these two figures. Japan isn't a very big country compared to Canada. Canada is 27 times larger, but the population of Tokyo alone is pretty much the same as the population of Canada. So it gives you a real sense of the size of the market here. We're talking about 126 million people. The population is aging a little bit, as I'm sure many of you already know, but there's still a lot of interest in education for young people here. So a great market to be involved with. It's the world's third largest economy, second largest in Asia. Our bilateral relationship has been ongoing for 90+ years now. We're coming close to 95 in a couple of years. It's a very peaceful, very highly educated society. Second highest ranked after Canada amongst G7 countries for the Global Peace Index. And also second highest ranked for share of adults having attained post-secondary education amongst OECD countries, again after Canada, an interesting point. We'll move on. So a lot of you will be curious as to the COVID situation here. Most Japanese have had at least 2 doses of vaccine. Omicron is still running, but things have really opened up at this point. As you can see, I mean, the percentage, even 65% of people have done their booster. The timing on vaccines here has been a little bit behind Canada's, but still very good uptake, very good willingness to be vaccinated. So that's important when thinking about bringing Japanese people to Canada, of course. And just to quickly clarify the situation in terms of coming to Japan, as of actually about 10 days ago, October 11th, Japan now allows visa-free independent tourism and will be removing their COVID-related daily arrival limits over the next few months. So it is a lot easier to get here than it was just even a few months ago. Previously, there were all these restrictions in terms of being part of a tour that required like a tour company to sponsor you and arrange your tour, all those types of things. All of that has been removed now. So coming to Japan is actually more or less, I would say, as easy as it was before, but certainly much more free than it's been over the last 2 years. All right. With respect to the academic year, and the education system, there are some really big differences. The Japanese academic year runs from April to March, with a break in the summer, but it does mean that they're really off sync with Canada's system. So there are 3 semesters for K to 12 and 2 semesters for most post-secondary education institutions. The summer break runs from July to the end of August, so often not as long as the break in Canada as well. I'm sure many of you have heard about entrance examinations. Many high schools even require entrance examinations, but most universities do as well. And this is a kind of an Asia-wide phenomenon. I know Korea is very similar in this context. So students really have to work hard to be able to get into high schools and universities. So that is also a dynamic. Those exams require, of course, additional study. Takes up more time, so that has an impact at the level of interaction with study abroad. So something to keep in mind. As far as English goes, English activities now start at grade 3, and English is being taught as a subject from grade 5 onwards. Since only a couple of years ago, to be honest, English was always taught, but there's been a bit of a boost, if you will, in the presence of English in schools here. It's going to take some time for that to really trickle down. We still see a lot of issues with English level, but progress is being made. As far as graduation, you can see right there, 74 credits are needed, and up to 36 of those can actually be recognized. So from other schools, other systems, and there's been really good uptake from the students who did study abroad to use this system. So they don't feel like coming to study elsewhere is necessarily wasted time. Well, this is just a quick overview, partly to sort of show you the market. The majority of K-12 institutions are public entities, and most of them are prefectural or municipal, but there are over 1,000 private high schools in Japan, and the competition amongst those private high schools is becoming quite intense. The education system is actually split a little bit differently from the system in Canada. But again, I mean, even between provinces, there are differences on that. So we'll just do a quick look at that. The education system is actually controlled centrally by the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sport, Science, and Technologies. And it's basically a 6-3-3-4 structure. So 6 years of elementary school, 3 years of junior high, 3 years of high school, and 4 years for most universities. Now, more at compulsory levels, which is the elementary to junior high school range, more than 90% of students attend public schools, and that's covered by the government. More than 98% of Japanese in general complete high school completely, all the way up to the full high school level. And the dominant language of instruction is, of course, Japanese here. A lot of secondary schools have a variety of quality levels, if I can put it that way. So it's depending on the source school, you'll see a lot of difference in the students. They typically assess quality using a standardized score or deviation value, they call it here. And it's assessed by private sector. So if you want to compare it, it was a little bit like the McLean survey, I guess. That might be something you're familiar with. In private schools, it's kind of the same, but they have a higher level of service, and they do offer specialized programming. So quite a wide range here of variety in the education system. If we move on, you'll note here that Japan ranks 13th in terms of source countries for Canadian international students. It's important to note that these numbers are based on people with a valid study permit. That's the only data we really have in Canada, without drilling down to like individual schools and collecting data that way. So this number doesn't necessarily fully reflect who's in the country. It also doesn't doesn't really show the full picture, but it gives a good idea. And as you can see, we did have a bit of a dip in 2020 as borders closed and people came home, that type of thing. But we immediately saw a very strong recovery in 2021. The biggest reason for that being that, of course, Canada's borders were still open to students, with some caveats, of course, but I think that that did us very well. Basically, in Japan, there are 3 key markets that are looked at, perhaps 4, but Australia and New Zealand, of course, same time zone, not so far, easy to get to for Japanese people. Those are kind of their primary markets, but they were fully closed to outside students during the pandemic. And a lot of Japanese pivoted to Canada as their alternate choice. And I think that we'll see sort of a longer term gain as a result of that. You know, the feedback on coming to Canada has always been very positive. So this is a very, hopefully a very positive note. We'll know probably sometime next year when the statistics are updated again. As far as, sorry. Yeah, okay. So actually Japan, I just want to make sure. Okay, yeah, so as you can see here, the number of study permit holders is increasing year over year. So that's really, really positive. And in fact, I think this year we saw just in the January to June timeframe, a number almost equivalent to the one we saw last year, which is one of our largest numbers on record. So by the end of this year, we should see perhaps an even bigger number than we've seen in the past. So there really are a good number of Japanese people coming to Canada for studies. Japan has lots of, and if we're sorry, we're going to speak a little bit about the opportunities here for your organizations. Japan is aiming very high in terms of internationalization. It's trying to raise its profile. There have been major events. Of course, we just had the games in Tokyo last year. We also have Expo 2025 coming up in Osaka, which, of course, Canada is a participant. We'll have a pavilion there. Due to COVID, things are a little bit behind in the schedule, but we have a number of people down in Osaka this week for the initial partner meetings for international partners of the Expo, and there's going to be a lot of discussion about how things are going to move forward. One thing we do know about the Osaka Expo is that one of the large focuses of the Canadian Pavilion in particular will be on education. So there will be plenty of opportunities there during that year to use the Expo as a kind of a framework to boost Canada's presence in the market. So we're really looking forward to that. There's also been talk about whether or not Sapporo will get the 2030 Winter Games. That's of course much further down the road, but it's still a possibility there. The government has been increasing its goals to increase the number of students studying abroad. So they were hoping to double those numbers by this year, both at the post-secondary and K-12 levels. So now what they've done is they've basically extended the deadline to try and reach these numbers due to the pandemic. So we'll see how this moves forward, but there's still a lot of interest from the government of Japan in terms of getting Japanese students into other education markets. The Ministry of Education actually financially supports study abroad for both post-secondary and K-12 students, especially in the high school level, for short-term studies. And it's a small amount, $650 Canadian for 2,000 students, but it's helpful. There are also public-private joint funded scholarships, something called the Tobitate Young Ambassador Program, which can go all the way up to $27,000 per individual, depending on the program length, for somewhere from 400 to 800 students. I think one thing I need to mention here is that there is perhaps, I don't want to call it a misconception, but the idea that Japanese parents don't necessarily need scholarships, or they're not interested, they can afford to send their kids abroad. And while that's largely speaking true, we've noticed really that there is a lot of interest in scholarships, especially when you consider now with inflation and the yen, which is crashing heavily, that's going to affect this quite significantly. So if your organizations are, have scholarships for international students, that's something that you can highlight in your discussions for sure. So this is just a list of various organizations, the Japanese government and another organization called JASO, which offer various scholarships. So just to give some idea, many of these are based on university exchange agreements. And we know there was a question about partnering with Japanese universities. There is a lot of interest here on that. And do feel free to reach out to us if you have specific questions or specific institutions you want to reach out to. We also just, it is fully subscribed, but just a reminder about our own business-to-business fair that's coming up in November. There'll be Japanese institutions coming to that, interested in doing exchange with Canadian institutions. So do keep that in mind. Okay. So there's also, oh, sorry, I think Megumi, actually, this is your slide. So I'll hand off now to Megumi to continue the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Steve-san. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning if you're joining from Japan. My name is Megumi. I'm working with Steve, and as he mentioned, I've been working with practicing and for education. So I think I met many of you online or in person. I'm really happy to see you online here today. So from here, I'd like to introduce some about like the recruitment opportunities, continue to what Steve mentioned. So as he briefly mentioned earlier, Japan is facing an aging population. So the Japanese government tries to new initiatives, including its education system with technologies. So first, English education starting in 2020. As Steve mentioned again, Japan designated English as the formal subject starting from the 5th grade, a change from the previous policy which began at the junior high school level. The policy also emphasized practice English reading and writing abilities. And applicable education technologies and devices will be utilized to enhance students' English communication skills. So the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, and Science, so-called MEXT, targeted the new 2 years for schools and educators to prepare and adapt the new learning contents. So followed by the second portion, computer science and programming education. The same ministry next aims to foster younger generations' greater critical thinking and problem solving abilities. Same year, starting back in 2020, computer programming education became mandatory in elementary schools. For example, students will learn how to avoid wasting electricity by using easy to learn programming languages in science classes, and also, for example, how to compose simple sounds through the programming designs in music classes. Another example is like for junior high schools, accepted to fully implement programming related to subject teaching from 2021, from last year. And in the high school levels, high school will teach students 2 types of programming: measurement and control, and network communications from this year. So we haven't seen a lot yet, but we'll see what's coming out shortly. And one of the examples of Max prompt is that the next one, Giga School Project. This is like the very last, at the end of 2029 in December, the Japanese cabinet approved the next to supplement by quite a large number of budget that was about over 2,000 billion Japanese yen, and that's about 2.6 billion Canadian dollars for this Giga School Project. This is a global innovation gateway for all Giga School Project. So it's a nationwide project which involves the other governmental agencies such as the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, METI, and the Ministry of Public Management, Home Affairs, Post, and Telecommunications. It's also like new for us, so we'll see how it goes. So we're seeing some opportunities for those who are interested in implement your programs like AI programs or something to this project. We may be able to introduce something, but we are still studying it by ourselves too. And here's the next one. So another opportunities in general here is that the technical and vocational education training often come along with the ESL programs. So we strongly recommend to tie up with the year abroad program of a Japanese university. And in terms of language studies, according to Languages Canada, Japan became Canada's largest sending source country with over 6,000 students enrolled in the language courses at Languages Canada member in 2021. And Japan has been the second largest source country for Languages Canada's member schools for last 5 years. At the time, more than like 20,000 Japanese students study English and or French at one of their member schools before the COVID. So we are hoping to get back to these numbers soon, but we are really happy to hear that the Japan became the top #1 source country last year. And also, we really encourage or emphasize here too that the importance of relationship management in Japan. As you may know, like Japanese culture values people-to-people ties very much and keep connecting. So again, we really encourage you to try to make connection or contact regularly with your partner institutions or agents. So this should be done not only by like email, but also by virtual meetings. And if possible, please come to Japan to see your partners at least once a year, if possible, and maintain a good relation with Japanese partners.
Yeah, Megumi, if I can just jump in, I really want to emphasize that point. It's so important to maintain relationships here. You know, you may not, even if you can't make it, reach out, do get in touch with people, let them know you haven't forgotten about them, and it goes a very, very long way. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Steve-san. So we often hear that if a person does not respond to email or takes a long time to respond, it is difficult for Japanese side to build a relationship of trust and bring the relationship to like the partner bring stage. So we think it's quite an advantage to have someone who can correspond easily or exchange information immediately. And I think BC institution has that kind of people a lot. So we don't worry about too much, but please keep your presence in our market. Thank you. And we also received the question about the marketing in the rural areas. I think we are trying to promote studying Canada all over Japan, but it's still really find it difficult. So you may need to find like dedicated person at the university or college or high school or institution, wherever, or in the agency there around the area. And those who are really keen to be connected with Canada. But please also contact us. The embassy may have some information about the regional areas. Those who already contacted us about the connection or interest to be connected with Canada. So please let us know. So, I'd like to introduce one local trade shows. There's a couple of local trade shows, and one of the biggest one is called edX. And this is mainly like IT industry trade show for education field. And ICT services provider, hardware manufacturers, content provider, e-learning, digital teaching, materials and programming, etc., etc. But this event is still really a Japanese company dominant event and no interpretation service at all. So we think it's a really good opportunity for Canada. But then if you're interested in participating in this event, the embassy strongly recommend to you hire an interpreter or send someone who can speak Japanese to maximize this opportunity. And at last, an opportunity to partner with high school, opportunity for post-secondary institution to connect with Japanese high school, which means that the kind of articulation agreement or conditional offer for the partner high schools graduate. For example, one of your like BC colleges has an agreement with Fukuoka Girls High School, which offers a conditional offer for the partner's high school graduates upon their graduation so that they can come to the college. Then afterwards, they have another pathway opportunity to study somewhere in like a larger university. And also another story before the pandemic, we've been seeing like interesting trends among Japanese high schools, particularly private high schools. They show the interest in introducing the overseas curriculums along with their local Japanese programs. So currently, Japan has two BC offshore schools, one in Tokyo and one in Osaka, so that the graduate can obtain two, double diploma, the one from Japan and one from Canada. And so that kind of trends we've seen quite a lot before the pandemic. So I'm not sure the current situation yet, because we haven't heard so far about these inquiries during the pandemic. But the reason why this was really popular before that was the parents sometimes are not so keen to send their kids to abroad because of this current worldwide situation. So, but still they like to their children or kids to receive overseas education with well enough level of English ability proficiency without going abroad. So when these students proceed their studies in higher education level, they maybe wish to study abroad or not sure whether they remain or study abroad, but this is another story that we've seen before the pandemic, just for example, for your reference. Let's move to next. Oh, yes, please let us know if you're also interested in connecting with Japanese high schools too. And I here echo what Steve mentioned already, but historically, Canada has been one of the popular destinations among Japanese students, and especially during the pandemic, when borders of other countries such as Australia and New Zealand were closed. And as Steve mentioned, they are our main competitors, especially for in K-12 sector. And Japan was kind of forced to look elsewhere to find Canada elsewhere to send students, and they found Canada. So we believe this is a great timing for us and Canada to welcome more Japanese students or having like the partner institution in Japan. So like many other Asian countries, Japan is Asian-driven market. So if you like to have more connections with local schools or direct student recruitment, especially in K-12 and language sectors, including work and holiday programs, you may want to connect with local agencies. And the embassy has a list of agents which were built upon based on our past EduCanada events. So please let us know. We're happy to share the list, but please note that the study abroad agency in Japan are not regulated, so we are not in a position to guarantee or endorse their services, but the list is there, so please let us know if you're interested. And also, if you have a chance to come to Japan, as Tim mentioned, it gets much easier compared to before. So please join us our embassy organized EduCanada events or fairs. But if the timing doesn't match, we still have a list of agencies where you can contact or connect by email or virtual meetings to build up your contacts. So please let us know. And also, even you actually the EduCanada events, which embassy organizes only for the brand eligible institution. But if you're not brand eligible, often study abroad agencies organize their own events, and especially if it's not, what should I put it? Sometimes the event is open for everyone. So if that's the case, we will place the event information on the Trade Commissioner education calendar. Probably you may see it on our events as well. So please check time to time, because you may be able to join even if you're not brand eligible. It's open to general public, to everyone. So please keep eyes on it. あとは、ですね。 Next one is that is in recent years, oops, many Japanese institutions, particularly post-secondary institutions, offering the short-term study abroad programs, combining with ESL with overseas culture experiences. And again, Australia and New Zealand were popular even before the pandemic because there's little time difference. So parents and teachers are easy to access the student while they're abroad, overseas. But Canada has been popular with its safety and clear English, but more and more schools are switched destination from Australia and or New Zealand to Canada because Canada has been welcoming overseas students during the pandemic too. So again, this is a great timing for us. So hope we can help to find you new partners or any schools to match your institution for you. And as for post-secondary institution, many Japanese, particularly Japanese institutions are looking for opportunity for academic exchange rather sending the fee-paying students. The problem here is, however, that there's not so many Japanese institutions offer accredited courses in English for international students. So it is hard for, we see it that it's hard for Canadian side to send the Canadian students to Japan, while Japanese institutions like to send many Japanese students to Canada. So there are some mismatching, but they are still aiming to have academic linkages. So some institutions are open to send a group of fee-paying ESL students first to build a relationship, and then ES program and go up to the second stage to the academic relations or academic exchange agreements. So if you are open to that kind of like a program, like receiving ESL students at first for the future opportunity or possibility to expand the relations to the exchange agreement in academic field, that would be also a good opportunity for your institution. Here's next. But having said, there are some challenges. So we've been repeating that the Japanese aging society and low birth rate, and also, again, Japanese experiences currently depression of the yen. So there may be less Japanese travelers to overseas due to this extreme depression of the yen, but we believe that the students who plan to study abroad still aim to do so. And having said that, some of the institutions, particularly for the post-secondary institution, college or universities, they are reluctant to send the student abroad. This is a group, not individuals, like the institution has to organize a group. Canada, but still Canada seems to be popular destination than other countries in terms of safety, lunch, and then other overall factors. So we are hoping that the Japanese institution keeps sending students to Canada. And also, this is also the repeat what Steve mentioned, but the Japanese academic year starts in April and has summer break starting around late July until the end of August, which sometimes doesn't fit Canada's academic years or program. But if your institution are interested in offering the tailor-made short-term program for Japanese groups, it may be a good sell. And that's, on the other hand, quite large number of Japanese institutions, especially universities and college students, to do a year abroad. And often university doesn't have enough spot for their own students to fill under the exchange programs. So the institution allows students to find their own programs by themselves. And the programs itself, the criteria is quite differ from one institution to another, so depending on the institution. So we are not sure what the details, but often this kind of program consists of ESL followed by 1 or 2 credited course at the post-secondary institution. So if you can offer that kind of programs again for Japanese students, they may be able to receive like 1-year student. And for secondary education sector, as Steve mentioned, Australia and New Zealand again are popular. So I'll echo his comment here again that there's no time difference or among the most popular destination for Japanese schools. But during the pandemic, the complete closure of their borders really, in a way, worked well for Canada. So once high school or junior high change the destination, it's really hard for them to change or back to their previous destination so easily. So once they choose Canada, we believe that they will set their groups another 2 or 3 years at least. So hopefully we can find the good matches for you at around this time. And the last challenge is that here again, this is what Steve mentioned, that the dominant language here in Japan is Japanese, obviously. So for example, like career development programs, which are often popular for Japanese, but then many companies particularly are looking for the programs in Japan, not in English, unless that companies really force the employee to speak English at the workplace. So it's really hard for us to introduce some career developing programs in English. But having said, the language like English learning is a part of their career development courses. So language learning ESL programs might be a good sell for Canada too. And based on what we've challenges and opportunity we mentioned before, here's some kind of tips and recommendation for your student recruitment. So please use us, the Revelation, the Trade Commission Services. We can share the market intelligence and suggestions and contact for potential partners as well. So we are here to support your activity here in Japan. So please contact us. And again, please join some of the EduCanada events or other student recruitment events for increase your visibility in the market. But having said, again, as Steve mentioned, we are still in the planning stage to organize a B2C events. So we will inform you once we decided or find anything we can do in the near future. So please stay tuned. And from time to time, the third-party organization also organize their own fairs. So please join if you're interested as well. And here again, please connect with agencies. They have direct connection with individuals, and sometimes they are subcontracted by the local schools or agencies. So they may have more direct information from the market. And also please consider sister school agreement and student exchange afterwards, because Japanese institutions are not so ready to jump into the sending the students to overseas, but they are interested in being connected with schools overseas. So if you could start with the relationship, for example, email exchange or virtual meetings, that kind of stuff. It's not directly related to the student recruitment at the time, but maybe it will lead the future opportunities. And you may be also consider to accept the school trips. And again, this is quite similar what the school sister school is. Many high schools recently send a group of students during particularly in the summer break for the overseas, and which is called Shugaku Ryoko in Japanese. And they like to have a ESL program followed by the culture experience in Canada. So again, this may not bring the direct student recruitment, but maybe build up the relationship first for the future opportunity again. And finally, social media is also effective for the younger generations, particularly to post your alumni testimonials, something like that. So here I'd like to share what's popular in Japan. Oh, by the way, here's the URL which we put the information about the student recruitment events or B2B session for Canadian institutions. And this is not only for Japan, for all over the world. And here's the popular SNS tools in Japan. We used to have the Facebook here with 2 million, but it's taken place by TikTok, according to this survey. Then again, so if you could keep in touch with us, we'd like to help you to recruitment activities here and also some other partnership development. So please stay connected through our newsletters, which is the embassy, particularly public affairs section, published almost every month, called Culture Canada, which will provide you the information on Canadian events across Japan, which include our B2C if we can organize in the future. And also embassy tweets and Facebook feeds as well. So if you could follow us, you will keep receiving some information in the market. And again, Tokyo.education is where you can contact us. So we are here to support your activity. So please keep in touch with us and also sign up for these social medias. So this is all about it. So once again, thank you, Kate and Morgan and BCCI to organize this session, and those who are joining our B2B events in November, we look forward to seeing you in Japan in person. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Megumi and Stephen, for the presentation and all these insights that you have shared with us. We have about 8-10 minutes to go over some live questions. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put in the chat or the Q&A box. So we have received 2 questions, both from David. So I'm going to read the question, and please give me or Stephen, yes, one of you can answer the questions. So it's in the Q&A box, and the first one is, what proportion of Japanese universities or colleges already have a study abroad program of a semester or more as a component of their curriculum?
Thank you for the questions. We are not sure how many of them, but it's really popular among all institutions now in Japan. So we say like more than 80% institutions, I think around, this is my personal thoughts, but it's quite a large number of institution offers or that kind of program. So students are aiming to study abroad.
Great. And the second question is, how open are Japanese universities or colleges to developing 2+1+1 or other similar arrangements by partnering with Canadian universities for degree completion or partial completion?
Thank you for the question again. And actually, we've been hearing that kind of option from Canadian side, and we brought up these topics to Japanese institutions. And Japanese institutions are quite interested in, but as you may know, that there are so many layers in Japanese university structures, so it may take so long to get decided. And also, this is quite related to what I mentioned about the Japanese institution, which doesn't offer English courses, credit courses in English. So it may be difficult to match the programs, but we see that there are some interest still. So this is our homework to do, work on this promotion and let Japanese institution know the opportunity of 2+1 or 2+2, that kind of programs. Thank you. We'll do our very best.
Yeah, thank you. So three more questions just came through. The next one is, will Japan have more places for students to do their biometrics besides Tokyo?
So we've been talking quite extensively with the immigration IRCC. They have an office here in Tokyo, and unfortunately, they don't deal directly with clients. There is, of course, a visa application center. We haven't heard anything specific about the opening of additional visa application centers for collecting biometrics. If there was sufficient interest, I think that's something that could be raised, but there's no specific plans to do so at this time, unfortunately.
Actually, there's one in Osaka, Tokyo and Osaka. Yes.
Okay.
I believe, yeah. Let me double check.
Right.
I'm sorry.
I can find out. I'll just go take a
Yeah,
quick look.
sorry. I think. Let me double check.
Thank you, Stephen. So the next one is from Dennis. I am particularly interested in vocational education plus English training. Please advise what programs are in demand from Japanese colleges.
Thank you for the questions. I think basically the Japanese institution, they like to do like the development of English learning skills. So like pure ESL is one of the most popular subject, like learning English itself, but also other social sciences and business, that kind of subjects are popular too.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there any interest in online programs in English?
Yes, I think so, especially during the pandemics. So, but I think there's like 50-50, those who like to study abroad and experience the overseas cultures. And on the other hand, mention some parents, teachers are not so keen to send a student under this current worldwide circumstances. So actually, the COIL system, collaboratively online learning for international learning, is getting popular among Japanese universities, and it, for example, that COIL system for a program can offer the almost a similar level of expensive learning programs in English with other countries and students from all over the world, but with less cost. So they don't need to travel overseas. So it's getting popular for Japanese students who can't afford physically travel abroad. So online learning, in a sense, is getting popular, I think.
Okay. Next one is, what is the most desirable length of short-term ESL programs and what month is most popular?
I think it depends on the institution, but most popular timing is during their summer break. But the airfare is really expensive. So I don't know, but it's really ideal timing. But during the breaks, like summer or winter, spring, is maybe ideal for Japanese, and particularly for those who are not graduating that year or that academic year. March is a relatively larger spring break for Japanese students. So maybe spring, if your institution can offer accommodation and special programs, that might be a good timing. When the bad timing is like during the so-called Golden Week in Japan, like it's starting end of April and around early May. This is like depending on the year, but it has about a week off for Japanese, and they tend to travel with family trip or whatever. And so I would say around the Golden Week season, it's not so ideal to welcome in the Japanese students or group, I think.
Thank you. That's helpful to know. The next one is Finland seems to be a popular country for Japanese teachers to learn about education system. I'm wondering how Canada can promote its own education system for Japanese people.
Steve-san, do you have?
I know. This is why we're here, actually, to promote Canadian education. I think one of the biggest challenges that we face here as the education promotion team is simply that every province has a slightly different system. So we can promote the overall excellent quality of Canadian education. We can talk about the similarities between provinces and such, but I think that's the issue, right? We have to equally promote BC's education system, Ontario's education system, Quebec's education system, and so that is a bit of a more difficult aspect, and it's something that I think Japanese people find a bit challenging as well, that there's no sort of central system to make things more simple. At the same time, we have so many positive aspects to our education system that I think when we do present about Canadian education, as I've said before, the response is always extremely positive. So I think we're doing okay in that sense. I don't know though that, I mean, I think the other side to this is that right now there is a bit of a Finland boom in Japan. Finland has been popular for the last few years for a variety of reasons, so we're looking at our opportunities to promote Canada and how to take better advantage of those. But Finland's kind of in a little pocket by itself right now. They've really done a very good job of cultural diplomacy and cultural promotion, and they're very hot right now. So we're working on it. Just to add, you're right, Megumi. There is a VAC in Osaka, and it's interesting. I think that's probably directly related to the fact. A couple of different reasons. We used to have a consulate general there that was where people dealt with, a lot of people in that area dealt with their visa requirements. So that probably led to the creation of the VAC. Also, a lot of our students do come from that part of Japan. So there's certainly enough business there to maintain that VAC. I don't think it'll be shutting down anytime soon. So we do have the two, but I don't think we'll be seeing many more. That's our understanding.
Okay, great. Thank you. I know we have a couple more questions here, but I'm also cognizant of the time. So it's already at the end of the webinar. So what I will do is I will write down these two questions, and we will get the answers from Stephen and Megumi, and we will be in touch individually. So again, I want to thank Megumi and Stephen for coming to speak with us, and I want to thank everyone for joining this webinar. I would encourage you to complete the survey once you log out on Zoom, so you can let us know your feedbacks about this webinar. Again, thank you so much for your time and joining us. So we hope to see you at the next event hosted by BCCIE. Thank you. Bye-bye.